Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. We're here today with our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday, where the topic of the day is going to be xenoestrogens. If you've never heard about xenoestrogens, we're going to make it really easy today for you to understand the topic and why it's so important for both men and women in order to know what they may be exposed to. Because being exposed to additional xenoestrogens, that means estrogens made outside of your body, xeno meaning foreign, or outside. It simply means not human forms of estrogen entering your body. Now, what happens when these enter your body from typical things in the environment? We'll get to those in just a moment. Well, we start to feel more brain fog. We start to feel more fatigue. We feel low mood. We feel more irritable. We start to gain weight that much easier. We start to retain more water, and sometimes there's even skin issues as well as bloating. So these are issues that we certainly don't want in our life, especially in adulthood. We've already gone through puberty. We've already gone through those hormonal disruptions. Really, we should be settled into a good hormone level for us. And so what I want to share with you today is this, is by increasing your estrogen levels, you are automatically, in most cases, going to end up with what feels like estrogen dominance. Now, that is pretty much what I just described in terms of symptoms. Many women feel this if they are premenstrual, or I should say premenopausal. They're going to feel this sometimes during the first, or I should say 5 to 7 days before the first day of menstruation. And they'll start to feel, again, if they have estrogen dominance, they're going to feel more bloating, lower mood, maybe a little bit more irritability. They might have trouble sleeping. They might have trouble with digestion. They might have some skin issues, maybe some acne around the chin or jawline area. And it's just, they're not going to feel their best. There will be more brain fog, more grogginess upon waking. Now, men can experience this as well. Anytime men are converting more testosterone to estrogen than they should, it's going to create more estrogen dominance in their body. And men and women exposed to these xenoestrogens can end up with a feeling of higher levels of estrogen in their body, and that's because they do. There are certain chemicals in the environment, again, called xenoestrogens. That is xenoestrogens. So estrogen with the xeno before it. And what happens is these chemicals that are unnatural act as estrogen molecules that can actually attach themselves to cells, and that disrupts your hormones in a not positive way. So these are more synthetic-based estrogens. So what I want to do is get into the long-term issues that they could cause, again, especially for women, but in men as well, and then where we can find them, how we can eliminate them from our life. So we talked about the short-term issues, but just again, recapping it, brain fog, fatigue, lower mood, irritability, and I would say weight gain with that. Now, some of the less common is the acne, adult acne. Again, during teenager, for sure, we get sometimes a lot more of that with testosterone, with estrogen, but there can also be bloating, and there can be really deep mood affected levels. And that means more like bipolar and depression and a lot of deeper psychological issues. And I think that's why this needs to be addressed, because I want to address both the physical body, which includes the toxicity, nutrient deficiencies, remember, and toxicities. That's how we look at a person in terms of physical ailments and getting well. And then, of course, we want to look at the mind. So there is that part of it. Don't get me wrong. We want to address all of those things as well. Previous traumas, emotional imbalances, subconscious thoughts, no doubt about it, okay? I don't want to discount that at all, right? But I want to do the things that we know that we can tackle right away that give people usually tremendous turnaround in just 3 to 4 weeks. So again, we can look at these things. Now, what if, though, you say, okay, well, I can deal with these brain fog issues and fatigue, et cetera, but what could it cause long term? Like, why does it matter that I needed to get on this now, or help a family member, or help more of your clients if you're a health coach or integrative health practitioner? Well, the truth is this, is that if we allow estrogen dominance or these xenoestrogens into our body for too long, it can dysregulate the hormones. Okay, so it can literally dysregulate cortisol, thyroid, and any other hormone that deals with what's called the hypothalamus pituitary axis. So the hypothalamus and pituitary glands are in the brain. And what they do is they are essentially I don't want to call them the messengers. I would say they are the thermostat. They are what tells your body how much cortisol to produce, or how little cortisol to produce, how much adrenaline or norepinephrine, how much testosterone, how much estrogen, how much progesterone. I mean, literally, I could go on and on. It regulates thyroid hormone production. So that's why when you have an imbalance in one area, you have to look at this holistically because it affects many different parts of the body. That's why when you go to see a specialist, I get it. They are brilliant. A cardiologist, brilliant in cardiology. A pulmonologist is brilliant in pulmonology, et cetera, right? But you have to understand is that there are multi-factors there. If you go to an endocrinologist for your thyroid, well, how do we not know that there are other toxins coming in your body, right? We absolutely know that, and one of them being the xenoestrogens. So we want to understand the issue with xenoestrogens in brain and brain toxicity that may also lead to issues in the future, such as Alzheimer's dementia, which have yet to be really linked. Now, cardiovascular, without a doubt, when you dysregulate estrogen levels, especially after menopause or men after 40 as well, then we need to look at what could happen in terms of cholesterol, cardiovascular inflammation in the cardiovascular system. And we know that's still the #1 killer, especially for men in the United States. Mammary gland issues, meaning like looking at breast cancer. So we know that the mammary tissue is very sensitive to estradiol and these xenoestrogens. And the higher the levels, without enough progesterone or other forms of estrogen to help balance that, this can really be a recipe for disaster, especially when it's coming from toxicity. The next one is liver-based issues. I've talked about this certainly before, but one of the issues affecting the liver is its inability to simply detoxify all of these things coming in. So xenoestrogens are one of those, but really we're going to get to them in a moment, but what plastics, PCBs, these things your liver has to keep up with, and it can't. We know that. Any person in the world could run an environmental toxicity test, and they can see if their liver is keeping up or not. I run mine every single year, and now that I've been doing functional medicine detoxes for a very long time, and my levels are good, except there's always typically one, and it's going to be interesting because I'm not living in the city full time all the time, and maybe it's lower now, which I'm hoping, but the one that was always elevated for me, now not super elevated, but elevated enough, again, I don't want any of my toxicities elevated, was exhaust fumes. And I live in the city, I work in the city, I walk to work, I walk everywhere. I walk 5 miles a day on average or more to get my 10,000 steps. And again, that's not as much walking as you may think. It's typically an hour and a half. That's it, of literally being on my feet. So it's not that bad. But when we look at that, I'm being exposed to exhaust fumes that I don't necessarily smell or see. And that's because, I'm a city person. And so I walk out of my apartment and I breathe in the not so fresh air as I'm going to work and taking my daughters to school. And so again, like these things matter. They really do. And I'm going to share more of that again on my Friday reviews. Okay. But that's the liver. And the other part I wanted to say is that the liver is the spot in your body, even for your own natural hormones, such as estrogen. It needs to break those down and dump them essentially into the intestines through bile, and that's how your body's going to be able to eliminate them as well. So again, we want to keep that in mind, that the more overload the liver has to deal with, the more toxicities there's going to be in the body. That is the rain barrel effect, right? The more you put in, the more likely the rain barrel is to overflow, then the more likely it is you to have some type of dis-ease in the body. All right, we know we can absolutely cause infertility and all sorts of hormonal-based issues, PCOS, prostate issues, et cetera, with higher levels of estrogen. That's why, again, this is not just a female imbalance. This goes for men as well. And then there's the issue with osteoporosis and bone degeneration. So those are the longer term consequences. Again, they're not going to sneak up on you overnight. These things happen over years. I mean, literally over years and decades of being exposed to them. The problem is, we're talking about them today. Sometimes our community knows. I mean, if you've been listening to the Cabral concept for some time now, this won't be your first exposure to the topic of toxicity. If you've read The Rain Barrel Effect, you are way ahead of the game, and that's because you now know these things affect us. Like, they're all around us. You can't choose not to believe in them anymore because they are there, and we could prove it again with all these different labs. So again, I don't think it's something to be worried about. Because if you do the right things, then you can overcome them, and that's why I always want to share that message of hope with you. So Super important. Okay, so now let's get into what are these again, foreign estrogens coming into our body for both men and women, where they're coming from things like phthalates. This is very important to remember. Phthalates are in beauty and personal care-based products. They can be in shampoos, they can be in makeup, they can be in moisturizers, and they don't have to list on the back of that ingredient label phthalate, and that's with a P. It's basically the P is silent in phthalate. So when we look at them, we want to understand is that if you are using a beauty or bath product that has unpronounceable ingredients, non-food-based ingredients, you could be exposing yourself to these phthalates. Now, an easy way to look these up, and again, I talk about this very, very in depth inside the Rain Barrel Effect, but you can just go to ewg.org/skin deep. And that is a website where you can actually look up your bath and cosmetic products to see if it gets an A, B, C. They basically give them a grade based on toxicity level. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I've been adding a lot of great resources as well. Of all the products that I recommend in my private practice and I use myself at stevencabral.com/resources. There's nothing to log in for that. You can just go to that website. You can use a little chart at the top to just look at all the different products as well. Water filters, air filters, you name it. I mean, it's there. And so the collection is growing for sure. I don't want it to get absurd with the number of products there that I'm recommending. So I'm kind of like cutting back on some, adding more, the ones that I think are most pertinent to you and your family. All right, besides phthalates, there are also parabens. Parabens are also in beauty, makeup, cosmetic-based products. They are in anything that can be put on the skin as well. So these are essentially synthetics. They're used for texture in products. They are used for sometimes scents in products. They're used for the overall viscosity of a product, like how it actually goes on. And so that's why you want to look at these things. You want to take them into consideration and understand that it will never say xenoestrogen on the bottle, right? It's not going to say that. But these are what are called estrogen mimickers, right? They mimic estrogen when they're applied to your body. You might say, well, I'm not swallowing them, so how does it affect me? And it's a very good question. But we want to keep in mind that anything we apply to our skin or scalp can be absorbed and is absorbed. So our skin, the great thing about our skin is as long as there's no cuts on our skin, you don't have to be worried about a lot of these outside bacteria or parasites a lot of the time. That's bacteria, parasites, I should say viruses as well. And that's a great thing. Like that's good. That's where that protective layer of skin comes from. However, there are permeable products, and those are the skin bath shampoos, conditioners, toothpaste, etc., that can just be absorbed. I mean, they can be absorbed through the capillaries in your mouth or right through your skin, because your skin, believe it or not, let's say you get a massage. I learned this when I was overseas studying Ayurvedic medicine. I took many, many trips to India and Sri Lanka, studied some of the best hospitals and clinics over there. But what I learned was that a typical Ayurvedic massage, it's called an Abhyanga-based massage. So we were giving Abhyanga-based massages, and we would actually choose what's called a medicated herbal decoction or ointment or, well, I guess massage oil is the best thing to describe it. But basically, it would have a sesame-based, typically, not always, but it would have a sesame oil base, and then we would diffuse herbs into it. And what happened was, and this is just a boiling process with water and oil and the herbs, getting them to fuse, and then they're infused in the oils. So you can infuse really anything you'd like. You can infuse ashwagandha or I could go on and on. But essentially, what you're doing is when applied to the person's skin, are giving them a medication, or again, we're talking about herbals, so it's not a pharmaceutical, but the person's going to absorb somewhere around 3 to 4 teaspoons of that during that massage and after, as the oil is being absorbed in their skin. Now, we're probably using realistically about 8 ounces. We're using a lot of oil during an Ayurvedic-based massage. Now, you're only absorbing a small fraction of that, but you are absorbing it. So just remember, the things that you put on your skin, you are absorbing. All right. Another one is this. This one's going to make a lot more sense. It's going to be very straightforward, and that is called bisphenol A, and it is essentially coming from plastics. So I want you to think about any plastics that you're using. Okay, especially anything that's heated. That's the main thing, is when we have these plastics and they get heated, the bisphenol A, the BPA in those things transfer directly into the water, and then we absorb it. That happens a lot of times when you use any plastics in your dishwasher, even if it says dishwasher safe, and you microwave it or you put it in the dishwasher, those things can then become more active and you can absorb them in your body. Be careful with any plastic water bottles being exposed to the sun, getting warmed up, and you drinking them, right? That's why you never really know when you buy plastic water bottles, was that exposed to heat in a truck getting it over there or what it might be. So do your best to drink filtered water with a good water filter, or buying spring water bottles. Spring water is great, and you could buy it if you wanted to in a glass-based bottle as well. Okay, so that's another one. Any plastics, plastic food containers, etc. Plastics, again, a lot of tin cans, right? People eating canned produce, whatever it might be. Keep in mind, a lot of the layers inside of that is BPA. Now, they'll often say BPA free, which is great, but that, again, there can be other issues depending on what it's lined with. Okay. I was going to go deep on that. We're going to keep it at that. The next one is this, BHT. So don't worry necessarily about what BHT means. I want you to think food preservative. If your food is able to last on a shelf for, let's say, weeks to months, it might have a food preservative. Now, there are exceptions to this. Like you can have oats and they could live there, grains and oats in general could live on a shelf for years at a time. Honestly, years at a time. The thing that you need to worry about is mold. That's the issue with moisture. So that's the only issue there. We're not talking about a food preservative. A food preservative would be like bread that you buy at a store. If you buy bread at a baker's, typically, it's stale in a day. Right? I mean, it really is. Like fresh bread goes bad in a day or two. And it honestly does. So that's why they sell day-old bread at like half off, right? 50% off, because it's hard as a rock. It's going stale. Well, when you buy bread at a store or in a bag, they'll oftentimes be, unless it's frozen, there'll be a lot of preservatives to keep that bread fresh. So I want you to keep that in mind. Preservatives, anything boxed, anything bagged is suspect. It might be okay, right? You can bag almonds and those are okay, but anything in a box or bag is suspect if there's multiple ingredients and there's preservatives in there. Okay, and the last one is PCBs. This is polychlorinated biphenol. PCBs are now banned, but you can still find them for sure. So here's what I want to share with you. A lot of heavy metals can disrupt the body in terms of estrogen. We've got these plastics. We've got phthalates. We've got parabens. What I want you to think about is this. If you're putting something on your skin or you're coming in contact with it or you're putting it to your mouth like plastic, you want to think to yourself, is this food state? Like, can I pronounce this? Is this something I could eat? And if the answer is no, then it's possible and most likely that you're adding some type of toxin and potentially xenoestrogen to your body, which could be causing some of the symptoms that you feel right now. So I simply want you to look more at your products in your house. So it could be coming from your tap water. I'm going to give you some of these pesticides if you're spraying your lawn, your cleaning products, canned foods we mentioned, believe it or not, even receipts. Like, you don't want to be handling a lot of receipts. And if you work in a place where you're handing receipts, I would honestly wear a pair of gloves. I really would. You can obviously just wear non-latex gloves or whatever you prefer, just some thin ones, but I would wear that because that is a major source, believe it or not, of some PCBs, but also xenoestrogens. Okay, air fresheners are a big one. Synthetic air fresheners, get those out of your car, right? You can use a much more natural essential oil for an air freshener. A lot of fabric softeners can have these xenoestrogens in them, right? So a lot of detergents and fabric softeners, definitely look in that. Flame retardants on couches and beds. We talked about the personal care products. Sunscreen can have them. Perfumes, like if it's not a natural fragrance, meaning if it's not an essential oil type fragrance, then a lot of those perfumes can absolutely be xenoestrogens, some forms of birth control, some forms of medication. And building materials, especially if you have a new house and you did spray and insulation and there's, let's say, you use paints with all sorts of different volatile organic compounds, VOCs, all of these things can add up in your body. So I just want you to look at the overall picture. Remember, it's never one thing and it's never any one exposure. It goes back to the rain barrel effect. It's how your barrel fills up over time. And the more stress you have, the less sleep that you get, the less good food that you're eating, the faster it fills up because you don't have enough to combat it. If you've never read The Rain Barrel Effect, I do recommend checking out that book. It's on Amazon. It's at equa.life as well. And all profits do go to charity. So what you can do is this. If you believe that you have a lot of these symptoms right now of brain fog, fatigue, low mood, irritability, weight gain, I can't recommend enough running a lab called the Stress Hormones, Mood, and Metabolism Lab. You can get this with your local naturopathic doctor, your local integrative health practitioner, or you can order it right online at equa.life. That's EQUI.LIFE. equa.life. And that is basically open sourced health for you. You know, it's looking at all the different natural things that you can do. You can run an environmental toxicity test there for sure, without a doubt. And that's a great one to run as well. But you can look right at your hormone levels. And that's what I recommend. If you have a normal menstrual cycle, you run it days 19, 20, or 21, any one of those days, it's going to give you all your hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, 4 levels of cortisol during the day. It's going to give you free T4, free T3, TPO antibodies, and TSH for your thyroid, vitamin D, and some blood sugar markers. So amazing lab. That's a lab I run twice a year myself, March and September. Just finished my last lab just a couple months back. And it's just, again, to keep me honest, looking at my lab levels. But if you do have symptoms, even more important to run it then. If you don't have a hormonal cycle, run it during the time of you have the most symptoms. If your symptoms are pretty much always the same, run it any day that you would like. Okay, so if you do that, you're going to work on a hormonal balancing program and a detox protocol with your health coach or your integrative health practitioner. That's great. So I don't have to work with you on that part. What I would say is this, is though, I would run the lab first. Now, if you're not able to run the lab, I totally get it. No issues at all. I would dive into then a 21-day functional medicine detox. You can see the detox that I use in my private practice and I've been doing now for many, many years. That's at equa.life/detox. It's one of the most popular and powerful products being used right now in natural health. We're in many different health practices, many different doctors use it, and the results are really outstanding for being able to open up those liver detox pathways, right? To get those xenoestrogens out of your body, those foreign estrogens out as fast as possible. So that's what I recommend. If you want more free information on this, go to stevencabral.com/podcasts, and you can check out my hormonal balancing topics. I have a lot of free podcasts right on that. I also have a free master class on rebalancing female hormones. And you can just go to stevencabral.com/courses on that. And of course, if you really want to jump into it, learn everything that you really need to in about a half a day on how to rebalance your female hormone levels, check that course out. Again, it's called the Health Results Accelerator, where I try to teach people in under 4 hours how to rebalance their body, everything that they ever needed to know about that one particular subject. And right now we have thyroid out there for people dealing with thyroid issues, especially low thyroid issues. And we now have our female hormones rebalancing Health Results Accelerator. So trying to provide the information that I can at all different levels, depending on what fits you the best. Everything will be linked up in the show notes today. That's probably an easier way to do this. Head on over to stevencabral.com/1769. I'll link it up all right there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful. And if it was, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve.